Look, 2 points I just want to tease out. One, from Ajahn Pavida's presentation, the thrust of it about the GVC. You know, there's a lot of fear that world trade actually might collapse. It certainly has slowed down, and we're seeing more protectionism and so on. But one hope is that GVCs actually will save the world trading system, because multinationals have an inherent incentive to maintain their GVC structures around the world, and therefore trade will have to continue. The other point is that from what you said, Dr. Pavida, about this kind of providing tax incentives and then going with the tried and tested promotion of foreign investment. Essentially, the EEC is another scheme to replicate. They want to build another kind of Eastern Seaboard development in Thailand. You know, the Eastern Seaboard was really the crowning achievement of the 1980s. And since then, there's not been a kind of this hub. But in fact, they can also think about tapping existing knowledge, not just rebuilding another kind of Eastern Seaboard in the EEC. Okay, now let us move to Dr. Sutapa. Dr. Kirida World Bank, now TDRI, Dr. Pavida Thammasat Business School. Dr. Sutapa is very well educated. You have all of their CVs, but she is now at the Siam Commercial Bank. And your time.
Thank you. Swadika, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for the Institute for Security and International Study. Institute of Security and International Study. I really do not want to say the word because I'm going to the US in a couple of weeks, and I really do not want to pick out of United Airlines because I got email from some organization recently. So again, Thailand 4.0. Dream or reality. A lot of people talked about that, and as we heard from such a fantastic presentations from my two predecessors, they also mentioned that we don't quite know what's inside of Thailand 4.0. A lot of it seems to be some kind of a dream vision of what Thailand should be or catch up with the rest of the world that seems to be going in that direction. So let me try to, I think Dr. Twida has captured that already, that the 4.0 from the industry revolution definition, it's go from steam to mass production to automated production and the cyber physical system, and that's mainly to capture how we are going to produce the new kind of products, new kind of merchandise going forward into the future, and how human and the digital world will interact. Thailand 4.0 give a different aspect of it. We actually try to tell what creativity and product innovation can lead us to what to produce. And that statement in itself is something is really wrong with that statement already, because when you lay it out how to produce, they're talking about lowering the barrier. What would be the clear rules and regulations to enhance, the innovation? And innovation itself is the word meaning that you really don't know the end of the tunnel. You start off with the creativity. It leads you towards that, and how to move things out of the way that could block the innovation. And by telling what's the end goal is, that can really derail or mislead the innovation journey. Having that said, what struck me this morning when I read the news is the quote by Jack Ma. He mentioned that the fear of the AI development that might replace human capital and a lot of the labor in the manufacturing sector. Well, when you hear Jack Ma, Elon Musk, and Stephen Hawking say the same thing, you sort of have to pause and listen, right? That are these fear is imminent, or if this can be a reality, and as Dr. Titinan mentioned, a lot of these Hollywood movies really do not help, to suppress those fears. I think my concern is when we look at the milestones or the achievement of the AI development nowadays, it's always marked by whether the machine can beat human, whether in a game of chess, in a game of Go. But it's really, these milestones, these achievements are remarkable in itself, but it really does not help us to see how machine and human can work together in the future. And I think that's where the fears come in. And as we see, a lot of this anti-establishment rising up in developed part of the world, going into the emerging part of the world, anti-trade, anti-establishment, anti-political movement, a lot of these are coming from this fear, the fear of being replaced, fear of change, the fear of global value chain, and I think that do not help going forward. So with Thailand trying to adopt this digitized world, I think we're in a good position to really ask ourselves of how do we want to engage ourselves with the new development of these technologies, what are the rules and regulations that would strike the good balance, not to block the development, not to go too much into the flow and having to close the gate later on in the future when the damage is already done. So I think this is a good time that we start talking about that, rather than trying to pinpoint what industry that we should pursue. A lot of my slides will be useless at this point because it has been covered fantastically by Dr. Kirida and Dr. Pavida. I just want to point out that Thailand 4.0, from our analysis, can be divided into 4 groups. The first one is focusing on high-value services, smart enterprises. This is to upgrade the SME to use a lot of these digital tools and more connectivity to upgrade their business. And then smart farming, which to me, I don't know what it is. And maybe the people from the floor, people on the panel can educate me on that. And then the high skill labor. And the last two, the smart farming and the high skill laborers, are the ones that really is the core of what would lead us into the new S-curve, to say, because all these two really on the fundamental or much more long term, and there's nothing that they have done or implement in the next few or the next 5 years is actually targeting on these two that much. So why do we need 4.0? I think the question, I think the motivation is more domestic than international tide of the world is changing and we have to catch on. It's more because we in the middle income trap, as Dr. Kirida has mentioned earlier. If we look at the real GDP growth in the recent decades, we can see that it's going in 3 blocks. The first one is when we were overshooting on the growth. That's before the Asian financial crisis of 1997. Then the average growth came down to about 4 afterwards. And as Thailand is trying to recover and build up our fundamentals to change a lot of institutions to fit with the post-crisis. And then now seems to be that the growth has also sort of come down to about 2.5 to 3.5, depending on which houses we referring to. So why Thailand 4.0? Because Thailand is losing competitive edge, and then the current economic model no longer works. There are 3 things that has changed in the last 10 years. And we have not done much to remedy that. The first one, as Dr. Kirida also mentioned, is labor shortage, the underinvestment, and the third one is that the ASEAN market has become much more competitors than part of the value chain. This one also captured the labor shortage, but I just want to point out of how much older we are compared to the rest of developing ASEAN. So the graphs show that the labor force in Thailand will, the working age in Thailand will peak next year. And I just want to point out that the next neighbor that's going to age is it's Indonesia, and that's about 20 years away from where we are today. The rest of them, we don't even have to mention that. And also, right now, the median age of Thai population is about 34, 35. When Singapore and Korea were that young, Singapore was 4 times richer, and Korea was twice richer than we are today. So that's something to consider if we can change our economic infrastructure to accommodate much older populations and the shrinking demand for goods and services. Then it's not just lie in number. As we all know, the quality has dropped. This is just to illustrate how much the quality of education has dropped. We sent survey a couple of years ago. We sent survey to about 500 to 600 companies, SMEs, that's our clients to our bank. Oh, sorry, that didn't come out. And then asking the questions of what's the reason that they cannot fill in their positions within 90 days, and more than half are saying it's not just the number, but it's the skills mismatch. The people who just recent graduates do not match the skills that the industry required. And we can see that the premium of education has dropped dramatically. This graph is showing that in a decade ago, that's the purple line, the university graduates, people with bachelor degrees, can demand 6 times the salary of people who have no education at all. But today, in 2013, that number has dropped to about 3.8 times. And to see the yellow line, why does it go up? Because the government increased the minimum wage, and that's put the artificial increase to the number. And therefore, in actuality, if there's no policy intervention, the number would be, somewhere here between 3 and 4. So that's the level of education premium that the Thai labor are experiencing. Adding to that is also the severe underinvestment, and we are unique in that position. If we look at these countries who have gone through the suffering of Asian financial crisis, at the time we were all in the overinvestment boom time. But compared to that and benchmark it to today, we have dropped 14%, as opposed to Korea, Malaysia also go above 100, meaning that they have accumulated a lot of capital stock above and beyond what had been, before 1997, but we are not. And that reflects in our productivity overall. This slide is slightly different from Dr. Kirida, meaning that our manufacturing productivity is actually worse than the service one, but it could be the difference in the years of its. This one is created in 2015. So to show that, why do I show this one? Because it seems that our service industry is the one that we might have some hope in, improving, or if we want to use these 4.0 to focus more on, advanced service industry, that could be a low-hanging fruit, to begin with. The third area, another area that I want to point out is that all these ASEAN countries have become more of a competitors. If we look at the inflow of FDI to developing ASEAN, we see that before our share is about 30%, and now has come down to about less than 20% over the share. Granted that over this period, most of the FDI goes to China, went to China, but even among these, the share that goes to Thailand has come down, almost to half. And that's because the rise of Indonesia and Vietnam, and that's because of the much stronger institutional stability in Indonesia, and the cheaper labor that's available in Vietnam, and also the size of the middle class that's growing in these domestic markets are making them much more attractive. However, I want to point out that we talk a lot about we want to change the Thai industry so that FDI will return. FDI to me seems it's almost an addiction, you know, because we always feel that we have to improve something or lower something to attract FDI. FDI there's a lot of studies, recent and in the past, that FDI really does not respond that well to a tax incentive. It's more about the opportunity of the domestic market. With the weakening, with a lot of these weakening fundamentals that we see, it's really difficult to attract all these company or these FDIs, and also it's also make us look away from improving our own R&D. Right now, R&D in Thailand stands at 0.2 or 0.3% of GDP. If we look at Korea, and Korea is the world standard, they're highest in the world right now, it's about 4 to 5%. So 20, 30 years ago, Korea was about this level. So we not, not lose hope, but we have to act fast to get there. Again, the export stuff, all this R&D that came to Thailand and had sort of stopped for the last decade. All this manufacturing that has been our key export, sending out. 10 years ago, they were constitute 7% of GDP. Now it has all come down, and all of you will probably see that who's using fax machine anymore now that we have smartphone, and who's using digital. Only the hardcore of you were using digital camera. So these are the new area that we have to look at to replace a lot of these outdated technologies in the country. So going back to the chart on Thailand 4.0. As I mentioned, the high value service is the low-hanging fruit. That would be the tourism, the investment in the ICT and the transportations that would connect Thailand not just within the Bangkok metropolitan area, which seems to be when the government's talking a lot about infrastructure investment, it seems to be divided into two groups. The one that focus on Bangkok, and we can see a lot of everyone has been subject to the painful constructions that's going on in Thailand and in Bangkok is going to be for the next 5 to 7 years, and the other group is the one that connect Thailand to a growth engine of the world, which is the CRMV. And the second part, we hardly see any development. And those are very concerning because those are the ones that actually connect us to a bigger market. And just connecting Bangkok just to improve the efficiency, it's not a lot. And we do feel that seems to be a lot of effort, a lot of the front page are devoted to just the development within the Bangkok in itself. So for me, before I want to conclude my first part is, if I were to look into Thailand 4.0, instead of focusing on choosing private sector where they should be or where they should produce, I would hope that the government would looking into first lower the barriers, all the barriers. Right now, the software part, let's say, opening a firm takes so many days. The custom clearing. Why would you build high-speed train when the custom clearings take 2 months? Being travel faster for a couple of days would not solve that. And the big bottleneck is more on the rule and regulation. So the first one is lower the barrier. Second part is have a very clear laws and regulation. very clear. I have no objection with laws and regulations. I think they're there for a reason, but it have to be very clear and consistent. And for example, if we want to really go into fully digitized society, then the Private Information Act has to come out much faster than it is. It's existed. It has been in existence for a decade, but it has never gone to Parliament. It has never gone to even the cabinet approval. And hopefully in the next few months, we can see some kind of development that goes, off the draft. That law, I hope, would strike a good balance between private information, personal privacy, and open infrastructure for the development of the digital companies. The second one is the ICT investment. It's not very clear of where the direction is taking and when we're going to see that's become a reality. And the last one is everyone, you cannot go wrong with this last one, is improve education. And to me, education is not on the front page of everyday newspaper for the last decade is really worrying. People coming to Thailand, the first thing that they say is, this country has human capital problem. We know it, they know it. That's why international schools are really thriving right now. And as I look for the summer activities for my 2-year-old and 4-year-old, where I can park them over the summer, the choice are very limited, and none of them really focusing on creative activities or anything that can lead them or build them and prepare them towards a next generation of industry that Thailand so much aspire to go there. So I would like to just conclude my first part here.
Thank you. ขอบคุณครับ Dr. Sutapa. Just one point I want to tease out about this digitization, digital economy. Innovation-driven growth, it requires a certain kind of legal infrastructure and landscape, political settings. So there has to be some freedom, to think, to innovate. Otherwise, if you have laws restricting freedoms, and how will you have innovation? So this is something that the government, I think, has not found a way to reconcile its policy vision with this legal infrastructure. Let me move straight to Prinn. Prinn Panitchpakdi is the head of Credit Lyonnais Securities in Thailand, and one of his jobs, and he has given many talks on finance and financial development, capital markets, stock market in Thailand. He also has given a lot of talks to investors abroad about the Thai economy. So perhaps you can share with us among your remarks, Prinn, what does Thailand 4.0 appeal to foreign investors, and how the world outside might see the Thai economy?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Thitinan. Since today, I guess we're discussing Thailand 4.0, I'm not using any slides, so I'm not going to bring you any back to the Thailand 0.4, but since you've seen many good slides already, today's also a main Buddhist day. I'm not saying this to let you join me in the prayers before my speech, but sometimes it's good to remind ourselves that the Lord Buddha at least has granted me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, or to speak up to change the things I can, and also the wisdom to know the different. The reason why I mention this is very important because you're seeing the title, A Dream Thailand. We can always dream and can always have scenarios, can always think about possibilities for a better future. Perhaps let me share you some of the reality first and the key challenges that I come across both in my job as a CEO of CLSA Securities and also on the board of governors of the on the Stock Exchange of Thailand. I was going to say Security Exchange Commission, but that's my regulatory counterpart. And in the finance world that I'm seeing, the reality from the bad news, from the darker angle first, we've heard a lot already about the regulatory challenges. And I want to highlight and touch upon the real examples and anecdotal evidences that are facing us here. When you are seeing the rule of law is not being used for development purposes, but for being only there as a regulatory, as a tool to punish someone or to limit perhaps often the creativity of certain industry to grow. That's when you run into a serious problem. There's a lot of countries around the world, and again, the reality is there's no one-size jacket that would fit all, so I'm not going to espouse the straight jacket to be fit for Thailand or Thai regulations here. But in the finance fields, there's a lot of hope for a regional regulatory sandbox to be set up in Thailand. By that I mean, if you look at the fintech and how operations of many new startups, many new fintech firms have been able to run wild or run freely within certain frameworks, both in Singapore, in Malaysia, where smart electronics is already prospering, or even in China, of course, where they've got many big global firms, Alibaba, Tencent, JD.com. Or, of course, the US, where there's plenty of internet and new technology, new economy businesses, champions there. There's a real reasons why Thailand is not moving on that path, even though we wish we are on that path. So sometimes, often the challenges that I encounter first is within the public sector itself or within how the regulatory framework would dare to move. Even within the governments, the government's talking about digital economy. But if you, and I want to say this because I know that Your Excellencies have many opportunities to meet with the Minister of Finance, Minister of Trade, Minister of Digital Economy, and so on and so forth. So I would love you to at least put on a kind, gentle word to them that, first of all, the challenge of Thailand 4.0, as I mentioned earlier, most of us in Thailand, a lot of us are only at Thailand 0.4. We are nowhere near 4.0. And the Prime Minister says he doesn't want to leave anyone behind. How about starting incrementally from the government sector itself, civil servants itself, to reform the way the government works, to have this to really get things started? And by that I mean, you say, oh, that's impossible, that's not gonna, that's like, you're asking for not reality, I've seen this. No, it's not quite true. There is a courage and there's a political will to do. Look at India. India, when you look at the country, everyone always say, oh, so much bureaucracy, so much red tapes. But over the last few years, India has been the government, and perhaps Prime Minister Modi have accelerated this, in terms of the internal labyrinths of the Indian bureaucracy, that they have the e-governments and to have the fintech at the forefront. If you look at the bank called Bajaj Finance, that's where I want the country to go. With no disrespect to Siam Commercial Bank, one of the biggest Thai banks here, Thai banks have had it so easy in the last 15 to 20 years. If you're going to speak to the Bank of Thailand governor, ask him, what sort of regulations that you have kept since the Asian financial crisis, 1997-98, that you have not changed, that you still protect the industry that is already big? You were saying you want to support the small guys. You're saying you want to support startups. You're saying you want to support small businesses, SME, to grow. Have a look at the financial sector first. This is one of the most protected sectors in Thailand, and there's no need to do it. The profitability of the Thai banking sector is enormous. You don't need to be a financial analyst to work out how much of these huge banks are making money per year. And yet, the regulations, both from the BOT, from the Ministry of Finance, from the Securities Exchange Commissions, okay, maybe SEC may not be totally in line with that, but a lot of the rules of law are preventing the growth of some of the more nimblest players in the fintech areas to grab the share. Some of this blame are not totally with the BOT. They may have the right to say, we want to protect the interests of the consumers. And that's partly understandable. But you have to balance it. And that's why I say there'll be a fine balancing act between using the rule of law or what you have for development as much as for controlling and maintaining the status quo, which is what this country does not need at the moment. Because if we want to stay in status quo, then we'll be falling behind Vietnam. Of course, we're already behind Singapore and Malaysia in terms of the smart electronics and startup front. If we want to attract the new funds, the new investment fund, and let me remind you, the private domestic investment in this country is so poor. And it's so poor for a reason. It's attitude and mentality. If you speak to Thai corporate leaders, they would tell you that they think of R&D, research and development, which has been weak, as been highlighted by the panelists here. It's weak. Why is it weak? It's weak because they see R&D as cost. They don't see R&D as the center of point to generate new incomes in the future. They're standing still and say, hey, We're happy where we are. We're happy where we think as it is. So they're sleeping as it is will. So this is both in terms of coming from the private sector angle, the big Thai champions, who I think they're great. They have many good companies in the big listed firm in the stock exchange of Thailand. But they're falling asleep at their wheels in terms of protecting what they already have and living off the goodwills from the past. The government itself and the regulators are clearly nowhere near to be seen in terms of catching from regulatory. I mentioned India, let me remind back again, Bajaj Finance. This is a commercial bank. In Thailand, I think it takes about 3 to 4 days to approve personal loans, at the good banks. Have a guess, how quick does Bajaj Finance approve personal loan? Let me check, anyone guess here? He say 1 day? Huh? 1 day as well? Sorry? 21. 24 hours. 3 hours. 30 minutes. Very good. Very good. It takes 3 or 4 minutes to approve. And look at the share price of Bajaj Finance, where it's been going. Needless to say, it's been going up 10 times in the last 4 or 5 years. HDFC Bank, one of the largest Indian banks, is already obviously waking up to this and putting all their teams into this whole new technology. This is, to be fair, it's nothing new or shocking. This is a blockchain, right? This is a big data, the use of big data that the government of India has allowed the e-catalogs of national identifications of their population. India has 1.8 billion population. If they can catalog at least 1 billion population already in a country that everyone in the world is thinking is one of the most bureaucratic, red tape countries in the world, why can't Thailand, that have a strong prime minister, powerful prime minister with Article 44, not do this? This is the real reform has to begin from within itself, from the governments. If they dare to dream the Thailand dreams of coping with Industry 4.0, the political will has to be there. And I hope the courage from Your Excellencies to speak up when you meet your smart counterparts or your smart ministers of Thailand. There are a lot of ministers who are very smart, but sometimes they need to support the words from the private sector. And this government do listen to the private sector. So it is crucial that you dare to speak up, to say, hey, look. And often I'm not saying this to blame McKinsey or to blame some of the international consultancy firms. Thai firms, SOE, state-owned enterprise, banks, like to hire consultancies. And often that's why they listen to Farang, they listen to foreigners. So we all know that this rule of law is an issue. I was on a trip with Minister Suvit Masinsi to Paris a few months ago. We met Michelin, one of the largest Thai company in the world. Michelin have asked for a tax on second-hand Thais import to Thailand to be removed. Why? Because Michelin want to use Thailand as the R&D hub to produce new and more innovative Thais. And hello, Thailand is one of the largest auto sector manufacturing base in Asia. And the Ministry of Commerce has not at least let go of this tax for second-hand Thais to use for R&D. To use for anti-dumping law, to use to prevent from cheap Thais from selling in Thailand. We want to be the innovation hub. And yet Michelin is asking for something basic that Thai government should be thinking about already and doing already before they ask for it. And it has not been removed. One good news is that Michelin Guide is coming to Thailand, by the way, towards the end of this year. So you will know what good street foods to have. And they're focusing on the good Thai street foods. And that is a restaurant 4.0 moving up the value chain there to get the brands and maybe street food become a little bit more expensive for you. So that is a real challenge. The second step that I thought is a challenge and interesting point is on education, which some panelists have mentioned. But the Thai education system does not teach the children to question, nor think out of the box. And some of the ministry tried to change this, but one of the interesting suggestions from the ex-Prime Minister of Thailand was that, ex-Prime Minister, not the current Prime Minister, how to solve Thai education is to abolish the Ministry of Education. Now, I'm not suggesting you go up to the Minister of Education and say, please abolish your ministry, sir, and then I'll bring in the Finland education or the Nordic education that is so well-renowned into Thai education. But there's clearly a challenge here where Thai kids nowadays are taught in school in a square-shaped, limited box and often get fake news through their smartphones. So often, digital sometimes, or the 4.0, come with a challenge that education, yes, while it's cheap, while it's becoming more accessible around, the quality is not there. The quality of the teacher itself is not there. And of course, the most accessible is through the mobile phone, through the line, Instagram, and what's not, which often you cannot tell the difference between the fake and the real news. which is very crucial. And let me bring back to the finance sector why it's crucial. The fintech that's been created and the whole ecosystem, we all rely on information, news, and the analysis of that information and transmitting in the trade, sales, and buy of the stock markets. All these informations at the moment are obviously being controlled, the license are given out by stockbrokers and obviously governed by the Stock Exchange Commission, SEC. The fintech are asking, hey, we have information, right or wrong, we're not regulated, we're just going to throw any information we want, and all these are coming. And now there's chatbot. I'm sure some of you may have had when you may have joined a group line of some big companies like the Central Group or some companies like Lazada. They all have chatbots. They're not going to have humans to chat to reply on all your questions. Now that they're brokers and institutional foreign investment banks, they also have chatbots to service their local retailers. So they chat, hello, what stocks to buy, what to sell, whatever. So this is the whole kind of information being distributed. Some of them are leading to obviously volatile market actions. Plus, you're getting robot trades. You're getting trade cheaper. Commission has been compressed. The goodwill that the Securities Exchange Commission wants to have in liberalizing the commission, i.e. having a zero rates commission, so you can buy and sell stocks for 0% commission in Thailand. Is that liberalization? Some countries in ASEAN with market cap bigger than Thailand cannot have this. But that's kind of backfiring on us because at the expense of what? Innovation for research and products, because good quality analysts, smart people, Dr. Titinan like him who offer expert advice on macro viewpoint on political and macro. You have to pay, you obviously have to pay the analysts, the experts. Where would the investment incentive be when we can talk to robots all day and trade cheaply at 0%? You get online trading, get whatnot. So that whole disruption is definitely already there. The program trading, the ETF, the whole fund management industry, and you saw from America, the compression of the fees that you can charge your wealth individual clients is already here in Thailand. A lot of the fees are being squeezed on the brokerage firms, investment banks, and the fund management industry who are our institutional clients themselves. So the trajectory of the earnings on the financial securities has been going down, but yet the commercial banks are going like this. So what does it tell you? Are the consumers getting a fair deal from the commercial banks and the regulators who are supposed to be looking after the best interests of the Thai public at large, freely allowing fintech firms, to have some of the capital requirement being removed, to have some of the rules that need every single approval from the BOT? Should we keep the law on investment to not allow actually at the moment, foreign investor to invest in Thai tech companies, a crowdfunding term. I'm on the board of Siamvattana, one of the largest crowdfunding firms in ASEAN from Singapore. And Kwek, who is the founder, is now living in Thailand. She's very passionate about her business. She's already complaining. She needs a Thai investor. Otherwise, she cannot comply with one of the SEC rules that crowdfunding can be launched in Thailand. You need a Thai majority owner. Why is crowdfunding a national security business that you need to protect? Of course it's not. I hope the Ministry of Commerce is looking to this, and if you meet with the Minister of Commerce and the team from Minister of Finance, to allow these rules of law to be changed, that foreign investors surely should be able to invest and own a majority stakes in a Thai firm like a crowdfunding platform where the technology, know-how, platform from abroad is already at a much faster, speedier pace. Thailand is catching up on that curve. No doubt we need to catch up faster. Maybe I've talked a lot about the challenges, but the good news is I say with hands to heart that I've seen the real actions that the government is waking up. And to do the 20-year strategy was not easy because, as John Maynard Keynes said, in the long run we'll all be dead. But 20 years, this government probably is not going to be the same prime minister in 20 years from now, although who knows, knock, knock. No, I think he has good intention and to plan something on the education reform, on the build out of the Eastern Economic Corridor, to do all this real long-term infrastructure investment will take time and good political will. So the 20-year strategy is on the right path and to identify the industry that we want. I think one of the speakers, Dr. Pavida, showed a chart that mentioned the outbound investment, the big Thai corporates, CP Group, Central Group, Thai Bev, these have all been rising, and not just big firms, smaller firms like J-Mart, Mac Groups, a lot of major Cineplex, Mega Life, all these companies are expanding abroad. Perhaps first in the GMS, Greater Mekong sub-region into ASEAN, and then going global. It is a good sign, but what is the Board of Investment, BOI, Ministry of Industry doing? They're busy promoting inward investment. Sure, nothing wrong with that. You want Tesla to be in Thailand, you want Tesla to do battery in Thailand. The Prime Minister is in Bahrain now trying to get all the Arab monies to invest more in the EEC and help us. He was in speaking to Boeing and all this company to use the aeronautic hubs using Sutapa Airport, which has plenty of land, by the way, to be the logistic hub and aeronautical hub. It's fine to do all this inward investment. But to be the champion and to cope with the Thailand 4.0 or Industry 4.0, you really need to leverage off the good stuff that you have at home abroad and to build brands that customer from international customer can visualize, can see, can trust and use. So I'm not going to say I promote all these big businesses and think they're doing the right thing, but the government itself should be the champion. Look at how JETRO, Japan External Trade Organization, has been doing. They have pushed Japanese firms abroad to make friends and to connect and link. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand and the Ministry of Commerce have good teams abroad too to connect. But the work that linking those ministries in sometimes has sensitive issues. Operating in Vietnam, for example, one of our neighbors and the biggest growth market. A lot of Thai companies go and operate there, and yet they get pushbacks. They get protests. I can name names. Central Group, for example. They bought Nguyen Kim, one of the largest electrical appliance firm in Vietnam. Burley Juker has bought a cash and carry firms in Vietnam. Vietnamese public are very scared that Thai products will replace Vietnamese goods on the shelf. And there's been protests both online and offline, and some very bad and negative and untrue posting online about this. So luckily, partly we have Kun Sanan, who is a very proactive chairman of the Chamber of Commerce for Thai Vietnam and actively trying to help that. But the BOI or the way that outbound bodies that I hope that we would have in the future, you know, coming similar to how the MITI or how the JETRO have to promote the Japanese firm abroad. So that's partly of what I would say. I think the future, the good side is also that the interactive from the local audience, the consumer, is real. If you speak to any Thai consumers who is below 40 years old, and I'm just about surviving that, I'm 39, so I can say that most of Thai consumers have been buying goods online, Instagram, Facebook and whatnot, and whether some of them may be fake goods, some of them may be real, some of them have some bad experiences and all this stuff. The trend is hyper-growth phase for e-commerce. CLSA has a huge report on the ASEAN e-commerce and the importance of the logistic system setting up. Alibaba may have set up a regional logistic hub in Malaysia, but for sure they're coming in Thailand in a big way. The way they're setting up the e-wallet here in Thailand for Alibaba is no joke. The way Tencent, one of the largest social media firm in China, is looking at a way to coming to Thailand is real. The way that Facebook is coming to Thailand and they know the potential here to sell both on the adverse digital marketing front. They know that Thais are one of the most kind of affluent online is real. So the penetration, and you see it, is 4G and all the companies that are doing mobile phone. This is accelerating, and the good sales online is only 2 or 3% of the total sales. The omni-channels will be there, meaning that Central Group will maintain the strength in terms of the brick and mortar and the actual offline presence as much as online. So it won't be, maybe not be as fast, because Thai people do like to go out shopping. It's a lifestyle to go out. But I think on the consumer space, you know, the disruption that you see there will come actually sooner rather than later, especially when the younger generation do consume more. My last point, perhaps, I think that I would touch on, I think for 4.0 is, I think that the whole issue has come about because of inequality and the digital divide issue, because I'm hoping that the governments will not forget those 0.4 people as much as the 4.0, because the key challenges of the Dream Thailand and coping with 4.0 is sometimes when there's no fit jacket for everyone, the government often have to walk the talk and do what they're saying. Because even though we appreciate that to get Thailand up to speed with regional players, peers, countries and competitiveness, often you may see a big gap. I've mentioned some of the highlights on misinformation in the stock market and whatnot already. The Stock Exchange of Thailand, that I'm one of the governors of, we are now measuring performance of the KPI of the senior management of Stock Exchange of Thailand by the longer term performance, 3 to 5 years, and not just 1 year performance relative to the stock volumes and robot trading and whatnot. We're measuring by financial literacy, how you can improve the literacy in the rural areas, as much as you know, promoting the fintech angle and trying to get the regional sandbox up on the Stock Exchange of Thailand here. So with that, I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prinn. That was rich, another rich presentation. I want to tell my students too, we have to go back to, on these terms, the chat box, sandbox, blockchain, we've discussed some, but we will have to elaborate. 2 points I want to tease out. One is that, it feels like from your presentation that the market and private operators, they actually are adjusting, they're moving quickly, but the state government actually is falling behind. And in a way, we have the infrastructure from the 1980s, BOI. This is 1980s, the BOI. So, floor is open. I'm going to add a few minutes to our time. Questions, comments are welcome.
Excellent selection of panelists. We are at 4.0 on the panel. So this dream is reality. We have the knowledge to move ahead to 4.0. But there's a recurring theme about our underinvestment. That's in education, underinvestment in R&D, in real business sector, in real economy. And we have seen oligopoly moving offshore, investing offshore. So what can we do to get them, the oligopoly, to think of Thailand first, creating job here, investing here, rather than investing offshore? Thank you.
You have talked a lot this morning about upgrading agriculture and smart agriculture. I would be interested in knowing what you think the impact of subsidies for agriculture in other countries would be on Thai agriculture. Is this an impediment in the future?
In terms of Thailand 4.0, how does that sit with leaving no one behind? Prime Minister is trying to espouse. Because it seems to me that they will be creating a lot of people leaving behind if we are not careful about it. So how do we take care of that? And also, how does it sit with the, let's say, sufficiency economy philosophy? In other words, policy coherence among these different aspects. And I guess the other thing is just since we have a female majority panel, I haven't heard anything talking about gender dimension of 4.0. Is it mentioned at all? What's in it for the women? Let's say for Thailand 4.0. I mean, not to mention that generally women outlive men. So, but that poses also its challenges as well as opportunities. So, how does that sit? Thank you.
I was very interested to hear of the many references to education system, and also I heard a reference to Finnish education system as well. And I would like to hear just a comment briefly on one issue, and then a question about relating to that, and that's. You were referring quite a lot to the insufficient skills and that the skills don't match with the needs of today's working life needs. And one issue that we also in Finland we've been talking about this and working with this for a long time. And one issue about 20 years ago we realized that it was very difficult to get young people and their parents interested in vocational education track. And we've been working a lot on that to make it more attractive. I have actually had good results. And one thing is that one of the key issues there was that we don't that it's even if you choose after basic education, if you choose vocational education, that doesn't mean that you can't continue at the university. So we don't have any dead ends on that system. And I was wondering, how do you see the vocational training here? Should it be made more attractive, or is there enough interest for that, or should more emphasis be put on this? Thank you.
Every government recognizes the need for education reform, even from primary school and all the way up. Yet nobody does anything significant about it. What can we do now to get this government to move on it?
Perhaps I'll start on education because, as I mentioned, I think developing the human capital is probably the =1 priority if we were to move to Thailand 4.0 or just move Thailand to a more inclusive growth society with higher growth. In terms of education, as I mentioned, it involves a life cycle training, which means that from the mother's womb, one has to be well nourished because, as we know, the IQ level of children, of babies in the Northeast is about 10 points lower than those in the other regions because they lack iodine. So, iodine helps develop the brains. So without iodine, that's just a bad start. You're there with 10 points lower IQ than everybody else, in the country. And then as one proceeds, of course, basic education. There was a question on how to get the government moving on basic education. To tackle the issue of basic education, one can talk for a whole day about it. But I think there is a low-hanging fruit that can be tackled, but it needs a lot of political will because it will affect the number of teachers. And of course, as we know in Thailand, teachers are an important voting base in the rural area. Because villagers trust teachers and they will vote for the person that the teachers advocate. So it's not easy, but one of the things that actually we found at TDRI in doing research, and it also resonates with the work that the World Bank has done, is that for basic education we have too many small schools, and small schools are not efficient and the quality are low. Although, transportation is very good now in Thailand compared to 50 years ago when we expanded the school network and there were more children back then. Now roads are better, number of children are shrinking, but we still have many, many small schools. And with the limited budget that they have, unlike Finland, we don't collect a lot of taxes, so we don't have enough budget for all the small schools to provide high quality education. So each school with, let's say, only 60 students from grade 1 to grade 6, will only have 2 teachers, and the teachers teach every subject. There'll be only 1 computer, right? So one of the things that is a low-hanging fruit in my mind is that if we amalgamate the small schools or merge one small school with an adjacent large school, that will provide a much more efficient, less costly and better quality for the students as well. And we can provide school buses for students. That's probably cheaper than maintaining a small school with a director. Every school needs to have a director, and the director's salary is about 50 to 60K a month, right? So that's why I say it's difficult, but it's doable because you need to remove those directors and probably move them into the ministries. That's at the level of basic education. At the level of vocational education, here I think there is high demand. When we gone out to do surveys with the private sector, the need for vocational skills is very high, but there is a shortage of them. I think there are 2 reasons why the number of actually students enrolled in education, in vocational education, has fallen over the past 10 years in Thailand. Because one is the prestige issue, right? That you're second class, so students and parents would not want to go to vocational school. That has been there's an attempt to resolve that, Ambassador. Is that at the moment I think the Ministry of Education is allowing students who enroll in vocational education to continue. For example, you do 2 years in vocational education, you do another 2 years in a university, and you get a university degree. But you have the skills of a vocational, a graduate as well. So that makes, I think, students and parents feel a little better that they will actually have a bachelor, degree, diploma, and Thais really, value that you have a bachelor's degree diploma. The second thing is that the skills mismatch, right? That vocational schools can be producing graduates, but the private sector is still telling us that those skills are not exactly what they want. So at the moment there is an apprenticeship program that has been started, not widely across the country yet. We did a research at TDRI, we did a research on vocational education and found some success cases. I'll just give you an example which can probably be expanded, is in Khon Kaen, where the vocational school in Khon Kaen partners with the industrial estates there and actually does this apprenticeship program so that students will be well mentored, and once they graduate, they have the skills needed and they can then have jobs in the school. So I think I will stop there because there are those 2 questions.
On the Thai outward investment, I think I would like to have a very brief answer because I think that in the age of globalization, we should not be government should not be thinking on behalf of firms. And what do firms do? Firms go to the place where it benefits them. So if we want Thailand to be the destination where firms come for investment, we have to know what investors want. Investors used to want Thailand because it offers cheap location for cheap labor costs and all that. But that is now past because Vietnam and Cambodia can offer that. So what can Thailand offer in better terms? I think now we are looking at issues that are more related to education, related to skilled workforce. We're also looking at how Thailand can benefit from its country-specific advantage of being the center in the location of Southeast Asia, mainland Southeast Asia. Do we use enough of that? Not really. Why would Jack Ma set up the distribution center in Malaysia when Malaysia is way down there? It should be Thailand that should be the regional hub for distribution and all that. Have we really used enough of our regulatory reform and all the skill sector to address this? No. I went on a tour to see from driving from Thailand into Laos and into Vietnam. Driver have to change sides, and then all the 1 point clearance of tax and reform is still a major issue. So this sort of things, I think I agree with Kun Prinn and everyone else that it's the bureaucracy and it's the government that perhaps need reform more than anything else, because I think the private sector goes where it benefits them. And my research has shown that foreign direct investment, in fact, does not impact the domestic investment of firms. It does lead to increased domestic investment, but only within a short period of time. And different type of foreign investment also lead to different impact on firms. And it actually enhances the firm performance. And that leads to my second point that I think is very important of the diversity and not leave everyone behind. In the value chain and in the world where the winner takes all and the big fish eats the small fish, is the most vulnerable who would suffer the most from this kind of advance. Because digital technology is something that once you cannot catch up, you will really lose out. And that's very dangerous, because I think that the labor force that is most vulnerable at this would be female labor, and the industry that are at most dangerous of losing out in the 4.0 are all the labor intensive. And we still see a lot of that from Dr. Kirida's graph on how much of the labor force is still represented in the economy. So I think that is some concern that need to be addressed more. And on education, I would just support Dr. Thitinan that I think a real panel on education is really needed, because we have been hearing a lot on this, and that's the next one. Thank you.
Was the impact of subsidy? I think it certainly have direct and indirect effect. As the direct effect, I think we saw since the crumbling problem that we're still experiencing and still trying to reverse that for years to come. The indirect impact that not a lot of people talked about is a couple of years ago when this were in full force. We see that recent graduates from universities actually went back to agriculture sector. Why are these concerning? This concerning is because the recent graduates do not find the occupations that would allow them to grow, give them proper training, to launch them to have a better job value and improvement in human capital going forward. So these indirect impact is actually have more problem to Thailand if we start to do something as a massive agricultural subsidy going forward. It seems to be something that be so addictive to it. Once we have rice, and it go to the next one and the next one and the next one, and the risk go on forever. Going to the next one is about not leaving anyone behind, and how sufficiency economy is going to help with that. My PhD, one of my PhD paper is on sufficient economy, and to me it's more on philosophy than the way we should do business. It's more philosophy of, and I know we're pressing on time, but because we talk about philosophy, I would like to take some time. Generally, when in the Western education, neoclassical, when we're talking about the welfare, we're talking about a lot of more material would lead into a better well-being. A lot more material possession leading into a better well-being, and the graph just go up. It could be taper, but it will still going up. But for sufficiency economy, it almost have an artificial level that everything would just steady. You know, the well-being would just go steady after you achieve a certain level. And that's more about the way you live, you know, you are satisfied with that level. And any further personal possession will not grant you a better happiness. You know, that's more of my interpretation. I think everyone has their own interpretation of sufficiency economy. So going back to how we would not lag behind with that, I think we have to be realistic. Thailand economy, Thailand labor force constitute about 1/3 in agriculture. If everybody engage in small farming, it may not be the best solution, and this may only apply when the country has much smaller portion of labor force in agriculture. Having said that, I think smart farming are necessarily about small farming. Smart farming can be large or small, but it has to be smarter. It has to be you know, the access to, for example, the access to market would be more efficient through digitization. You could be a small farmer, very niche, building organic farming, but you can mark your production to the demand, you know, with real time. That would be smart farming. But by no means, it doesn't mean that everyone should really shrink back and try to, you know, grow everything that they consume. That could, in large portion, I think that can be may not be entirely positive outcome.
คุณปรินครับ
ครับ
1 minute for you.
Since Dr. Sutapa said I should mention something about feminism, I think actually feminist for Thai people is not Thailand 4.0. It's a very bread and butter Thailand 1.0. Anyone who lives in Thailand probably knows that the number of Thai female executives is on the rise. It's a lot. It's huge percentages, especially in the finance industry. And not just finance industry, in the education world, the respect, you know, this may be the only stage where Dr. Titinan can tell Dr. Pavida to limit your time to speak elsewhere. So the respect and the love and, you know, for the Thai female, both, you know, colleagues, friends and at work, you know, I think for me, feminist has redundancy jobs in Thailand. So I think that's for one point. The second point I would say is that on the sufficiency economy, it's interesting how the social media and the 4.0 is bringing this more, both in terms of the accountability, because for me, part of the sufficiency economy, besides being mindful not to overspend, overinvest, or doing all the stuff, I think it's also the importance of being mindful of the impacts of your actions on your neighbors, on your stakeholders, and Thai corporates, and I think most of the private and public sector have taken this to heart. One of the new decree that's coming out on the social enterprise will lead to a new batch of social entrepreneurs being pushed at the forefront. And one thing that I hope at Chulalongkorn has this capacity to have this social innovation course. You know, you already have sustainability schools, and I hope you take one more step to have the social innovation where many of the good universities abroad are taught this course, because the impact of big corporates, Thai corporates are aware in terms of once they make incremental investment, whether it's in the coal-fired space that would impact the NGO, impact the environment. They're very well aware of this, and that's why the process, each step that they're doing this, is more mindful of either the negative or the positive impacts that they can have on the community that they operate in. It's become a must and imperative that they must mindful of this and their actions, and not just to mindful of their profits, the actual corporate governance and all this action. I think the Stock Exchange of Thailand have pushed those firms, you know, who do those stuff to have and you've seen higher multiples, re-rating for those companies. On Thai companies being impacted by agri subsidies abroad, I think for Thailand, again, this is a credit to the government. I think with moving up the value chain, I think the governments know that we're not going to compete on pricing. Thai agri products should, and why not, command a higher price for better quality, as is French wine and grapes, you know, why the wines and grapes command a higher products. They have a story to tell, they have the way to market and commercialize the product. I'm not sure many of you here knows that rice, starch from the rice can be used to produce a capsule for the medicine. So one of the firms in the northeastern province, you often see northeast as one of the poorest region in Thailand, but this firm has already have a patent with the Swiss drugs medicine manufacturers in Switzerland to use from rice the technology to transfer rice into the capsules and make this in a more grand scale production. That trend will be in past, whether it's using rice to be snacks, whether it's And all this high yield farming and trying to make the rice per hectare, all this, I think the education will come. But for me, the key is how do you get those farmers to understand that the products they sell can be commercialized in a more profitable manners so that their income per month, income per hour, average hourly wage will go up with or without the minimum wage. Big Thai firms investing abroad, I'm not so worried about, as I say earlier, we need to build Thai brands abroad. But incentive for Thai firms to invest is purely just growth. You know, Thai corporates are looking for interesting growth opportunities and they have to balance it out. Because if they see their next door neighbor growing much faster, take Central Group again as an example. Central Group, one of the largest department store in Thailand, the saturation of the number of malls in Bangkok is visible for you all to see. And probably on the big satellite towns, Chiang Mai, Phuket, Nakhon Ratchasima, and Khon Kaen, all these are having more malls. So how much more can Central grow in Thailand? They have to look at where the retails are growing. And Vietnam clearly has a huge opportunity for growth in terms of population, amount of middle income class that can spend more. So just by basic research of some corporates, they will have that intention to place that incremental capital to generate incremental higher profit returns elsewhere. So that is a business decision. But I think, again, it's come back to attitude and mindsets of Thai companies not investing much more at home. I think the government, again, has to provide an environment that is stable and a credible macro long-term policy, which I think this government is trying with their 20-year strategy to see which industry they're taking us and which area they want to promote and what incentive they can give. Again, I am not a big fan. I think someone mentioned about financial incentive and taxation may not draw the money. The new investment may not come just because of taxation. You really have to have both the ecosystem. So when you say you want to do fintech or new technology, how can you enlist the whole ecosystem to be with you? To make this more than just a dream, you need code writer, you need software developers. Do we have enough in Thailand? Of course not. And part of that is the whole education and how the structure of the curriculums is not direct at the jobs that you want to create in the country. Again, if the responsibility may lie with the finance ministry, how they allocate the budget to the Ministry of Education to spend in a more efficient manner, because Ministry of Education already get one of the largest budget allocation in Thailand. So how do they spend that in a more efficient manner to drive the education and have a better, more relevant curriculum?
I just have a last two parting remarks. One about manufacturing. There's not such an dramatic end to manufacturing. Otherwise, we can't be here. But manufacturing in 4.0, fourth industrial 4IR, will change. Global manufacturing will be more robotics and so on. For Thailand, manufacturing will have to be more innovation, efficiency-based and driven. Now, our discussion really leads to politics. This 4.0, inspired by Germany, in fact, is the second generation. First generation was about 15 years ago. And that was, they call that cluster development project. The model at that time was South Korea. The studies on creative Korea, Korea was the model. Inspiration this time is more like the Germany, but the same people are behind it. Dr. Suwit Mason C, professor here, now working for the government, but his colleagues, Dr. Somkit, Pisak, they come from the same kind of school, and they read the same kind of books, a lot of the marketing books, and you can read them yourselves. Now, 15 years ago, they talked about cluster development, so food, fashion, autos, tourism, healthcare, and add-ons like aviation and other clusters. And that was all derailed. It's a pity. They had some ideas at that time. They had some leadership, but in the end, the leaders couldn't keep their pockets away from the pie, so it got all derailed. Now they have a kind of another push. The problem this time is that the people in power, not the kind of people who understand who should be peddling 4.0. So the people who are peddling 4.0, they don't really have the authority, and they have to always sell their ideas to their own government, to their own colleagues and leaders and political masters. And that's why we have a lot of shortcomings with 4.0. But I want to end on an optimistic note, and I see some optimism that over time, this has become now a kind of underpinning, a base consensus for Thailand that whichever the government that we have, military government, elected government, and so on, they will have some commonalities, and they will have some populist measures because we have still a big farm sector employing a lot of people. But they also are interested in niche strategies, upgrading strategies, and so on. We saw it 15 years ago, we see it now. So I hope and I think that this will continue. So the kind of platform discussions that we are having here, I wish we can have Dr. Kirida and Dr. Pavida and also Sutapa run the economy, because these are the kinds of ideas that we need, but they need to be implemented. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us and your time, and I apologize that we have gone over time a little bit. Thank you for joining us today. I think it's been rewarding, enriching, and I think we'll have something to think about going back, and we also have YouTube clips to go back to. Thank you very much.